have the greatest job in the world, and that's working with dogs.
Best in Show winner is the French Bulldog.
Winston won the National Dog Show. It was amazing. It was exciting. And to have a dog to be #1 dog in this country, you have to have great nutrition. And I always fed Pro Plan. Just like us, when we eat well, we feel good. And I just love that food and what it's done all these years to all the dogs I've bred and all the dogs I've shown.
Welcome to Pure Dog Talk. I am your host, Laura Reeves, and my dear friend, Dr. Marty Greer, and I are here together today, and we're talking about something that from our world has reached all the way to the United States Senate, which I think is actually a super big deal. In fact, Marty and I just went through some of this, and there were things even she didn't know, which blew my mind because I believed to today's age that Marty Greer knew everything. And so I'm super disappointed about this, but we're gonna go for this. So I just wanted to kind of welcome Marty. #1, welcome. How you doing?
Thanks. I'm good, thanks.
That's good.
Yeah, I think you have too much faith in me, but okay.
No, I have like ultimate faith in you to know everything, like seeds under the Arctic Circle and stuff. Like, come on.
I know a lot, but I'm not omnipresent and
Omniscient. So
yeah,
today
not
we are going
right.
to talk about something that has been on social media and, as I said, has made it all the way to the U.S. Senate, and that is the concept of corporate takeover of veterinary clinics. And so I'm going to read a letter that was written recently. It was about a month ago, August 7th. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Richard Blumenthal sent a letter to this company called JAB Holding Company. I'm going to tell you, you can go Google it. We just did. And so this company is one of the private equity firms that has spent billions on buying up veterinary practices and then looting the profits while reducing the quality of care, increasing prices for pet owners, and making working conditions even harder for veterinarians. This is the text of the letter that these senators sent to this company. Okay? I quote from the letter. Given that more than 2/3 of U.S. households own a pet, corporate consolidation of veterinary care and an accompanying rise in prices represents a major issue for American consumers and a life and death issue for their pets. Over the past decade, and this is still from this letter, private equity firms like JAB have launched a large-scale effort to buy up small veterinary practices and consolidate them under the ownership of larger corporations. JAB, in particular, has received significant regulatory scrutiny for the scale and speed with which it has acquired veterinary practices and other pet-related companies. The Federal Trade Commission has twice ordered JAB to divest clinics in concentrated regional markets. When we look just now, one of the 4 holding companies that JAB lists has hundreds of veterinary clinics around the United States, including dozens in multiple population centers. Okay? So the senators write, quote, private equity roll-ups of veterinary practices harm veterinarians and customers alike, end quote. Veterinarians at private equity-owned practices have reported being overworked and pressured to upsell patients on expensive tests and procedures. At some practices, corporate managers require clinicians to meet demanding quotas for certain procedures, tying their income to the amount of revenue that they generate. And this letter goes on. You guys can go look it up. There's lots and lots more to this. But what I wanted to talk to Marty about, because we've seen this, we've talked about it, it's been on social media. I know people who have been affected by this. And so I wanted to talk to our source and get to the bottom of this about how it's impacting veterinarians that she knows. So talk to me,
Sure.
Marty.
Yeah, and I think this is a great question because we talk about this weekly, sometimes daily, sometimes many times a day. in our practice. So this is, I think, really important that as consumers, you all understand what's going on. The trend to purchase veterinary clinics has been going on for probably about 12 to 15 years. It started with just a couple of consolidators. It's now up to about 80, and some of the consolidators have consolidated. So we now see some of these groups recapitalizing and then moving on and being sold to another consolidator. So it's been kind of interesting to watch and frankly pretty scary. Just before COVID, the prices of veterinary clinics were at an all-time high, and then it dropped during COVID. We said to our accountant, "So did we miss the opportunity when we didn't sell?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, but but." So the problem is that these consolidators come into your practice. They send emails, phone calls, cold call, show up at your door. They try to be pretty discreet because they don't want your staff to know that this is going on. And they contact you and say, we're interested in purchasing your practice. If you decide to contact them, they pretty immediately ask what your gross is. And that's sort of the breaking point of, if you're above this level, you're under consideration. If you're below that level, you're not. So they, if I picked up the phone today and called 80 consolidators, I would have 80 people interested in buying my practice because we meet the need of the gross in our practice. And there's only a handful of practices in Wisconsin that are large enough for the consolidators to purchase that haven't been sold yet. And probably that's the case in every state, is that there's going to be a few holdouts like us that are reluctant or unwilling to sell. Now, the small practices, the one doctor practices, the 1.5 doctor practices, the ones that are the old man's practice where it's really not profitable, they're not really interesting to the consolidators.
Okay.
But the larger practices are. And seriously, I could have 80 offers tomorrow if I wanted to go that way. And that's the case in a lot of veterinary practices.
Fascinating. I mean, this is just such an undiscussed area of
Mhm.
our world. And so, I read the letter. Is that an accurate statement? Is that what's happening when these practices are bought?
Well, it's not what they tell you is going to happen. They tell you that they will give your staff better benefits, and they probably do. They tell you, we will unload all that stuff off of you that you don't want to deal with, the HR, the purchasing, all the back office stuff that you as a veterinarian didn't go to vet school for, didn't learn in vet school, don't want to learn, don't want to know, don't want to deal with. They'll say, we're going to lift all this off your shoulders. You can just practice medicine. It's going to be awesome. And if you're a large producer in the practice, the owner or one of the bigger producers, they want you to stay for 2 years. And that at that point, you can walk away with this bucket of money. Now, it used to be a bucket of money. Now, a lot of them, instead of it being just a cash deal, tend to sell you shares of the practice or of the corporation. And so then, if the performance of that corporation is good, then you come out okay. And depending on where in the cycle you are on recapitalizing, you may come out okay, you may not come out okay. But basically, they want you to work for 2 years. They're going to give you a certain amount of money, but you have to continue to increase your gross during that time period, or you're not going to get the pay. If the corporation doesn't do particularly well, then you're not going to have the payout that you were expecting. So it's ebbed and flowed. It's changed quite a bit as practices are bought and sold and things are changed, and as the economy has changed.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all really important things to understand, that it's not just, here's a big check, here's a big check, you can walk away. That isn't how it works.
And I clearly you're in the business, you talk to folks. Is it impacting the people that you know who have sold their practices into a corporate environment? Is it impacting those practices as is indicated in the letter I read?
Well, it has different impacts in different practices. the practices that we've really watched the most closely personally are the practices that have done a lot of canine reproductive services in our community, either in our immediate area or across the country, because these are colleagues of ours.
Hmm.
And that to me has been really hard to watch because a lot of the practices have not continued to thrive after the sale of the practice. Many times after the principal owner is gone, after 2 years, they leave, and so the quality of the practice goes down, the amount of reproductive services they want to offer goes down. Now, sometimes it's thriving, but sometimes it's not, and that's always the chance you take. And so you have these 80 people to choose, or 80 organizations to choose from. So you have to decide really carefully who you want to affiliate with and whether their values and your values are going to align. One of the practice consolidators that we've kind of been watching, just because they were interesting, is no longer family owned. So, that was one of their big selling points is, oh, you're going to be like family. Well, they've recapitalized again, and it's no longer that family kind of environment. So that's been our concern, is that we are really attached to our clients and really attached to our staff, and we want what's best for them. And while I'd like to see that the staff had better benefits, if that's actually the case, um, it's not better for our clients in many cases. They tell you nothing is going to change. We're not going to put a sign out front. We're not going to change your banner. We're not going to do any of those things. Nobody will even notice. Oh, trust me, clients notice.
Trupanion is revolutionizing medical insurance for pets by providing the best possible experience to our members. And it's not some space-age dream. It's happening now. We pay your veterinarian directly while you're checking out, and we're the only ones who can, which means you have decisions in seconds, and you don't have to wait for reimbursement. So unlike with other providers, you'll keep more money in your pocket. Ask your veterinarian if Trupanion can pay them directly, because there's pet insurance, and then there's Trupanion.
I've seen it and sort of bounced off of it. I am very fortunate. I have one of those single vet practices that I work with, and I mean that's my worldview. But specialty practices, emergency practices, those kinds of things seem to be particularly ripe for this sort of thing. A
Right.
blue pearl type of situation, another type of practice. Are you seeing the cost shift? And also what I have personally not experienced but have seen discussed repeatedly, is the idea that these corporate practices are literally refusing to do anything reproductive, including a C-section that doesn't involve a spay, that sort of a thing. Is that been your experience, or what? Talk to me through that a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly concerning. The There's one emergency clinic left in Wisconsin that's privately owned.
Wow.
One. All the ones in Madison, Milwaukee, the greater, the larger cities, there's only one left. And so it's been hard to watch, but it's also hard to understand how much of the inability for practices to, like the emergency clinic referral centers, to accommodate the caseload, how much of that's related to COVID and the aftermath of shortages and changes in people's work-life balance and all the things that have happened during COVID. How much of that is due to COVID, and how much of that is due to corporations and people that don't want to work for a corporate practice, or people that don't feel like that's in their best interest. So it's been, the timing of it is such that it's very difficult to really understand what the dynamics of all that happen to be. But most people understand that it's no longer you can't just show up at the door of the emergency clinic and have them open the door and take you in with open arms. That's changed dramatically in the last 5 years. And the problem is, so when I started practice 43 years ago, I worked at an emergency clinic. It was the first privately owned emergency clinic in the country. It was owned by a guy who, instead of it being a group of veterinarians that came together and said, we don't want to take emergencies anymore, let's share a call, we'll do it at your practice, or we'll move it around, or we'll build a building, or whatever. that was sort of the business model that started 44 years ago. 43 years ago, this individual started the first privately owned emergency clinic in the country. And he was very careful not to step on toes, not to take call if they didn't want it. He was very sensitive to understanding that there were going to be practices that still wanted to take their own emergencies. Well, in 40 years, people don't. When we, as veterinarians, have built a structure of relying on the emergency clinics for weekends, for nights, for middle of the night, for high level surgeries that are beyond the scope of what most practices can do, or where the patient should have 24-hour care, and we don't have that as an option in our emergency clinics or in our regular practices anymore. And so we've had a whole shift in how the business model is structured.
Right.
And now that we've had the rug jerked out from under us, clients and veterinarians are starting to suffer the effects. And of course, their pets are the ones paying the price for not being able to get that care. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a cat that came into the clinic where I was working, and the doctor, seeing the patient, knew that the cat needed after-hour care, and so she assigned 4 different people to call every emergency clinic in the city to find one that could take this cat. So she's like, "You call this one, you call this one." She just went right down the line and said, "Boom, boom, boom, boom," and was able to find one of the 4 emergency clinics that could take the cat. So, this is the reality of what's happening, and I'm not completely sure. We were actually talking about this yesterday, of what happened in veterinary medicine that has turned veterinary staff and veterinarians themselves off of wanting to work with breeders. They've always had a bit of a reputational issue, but it's gotten far worse. The students that are being educated are coming out of school with a whole mindset of breeders are bad. I don't understand that. A, I love my breeders, and B, breeders are a fabulous way to build a practice, because instead of having one client, if you have a litter of 12 puppies, now you have 13 clients. It makes a lot of sense to me that there's a method to the madness of wanting to work with breeders. Not just that I personally am one and love them, but it just makes sense to me that you get to grow a practice. And I'm going to tell you that breeder clients are willing to do things for their breeding stock and their puppies that a lot of people with rescue dogs simply will not or cannot do. So I don't get where this mindset is, and if somebody can enlighten me, please send me an email. I'd be very open to hearing your opinion on how we got into this pickle.
But I think, Marty, it's society. I mean, you deal with it with
Yeah.
NAIA. It is the conversation has changed.
It has.
Word choice that has been foisted upon us by
Yes.
the animal rights organizations, that has been unfortunately adapted in many cases into the purebred dog world. And I've told you, we've talked about this. I've done presentations to the veterinary schools, a couple of them, a couple different times, and talking to the kids, and they're very excited about their career and dogs, and they love to pet the fluffies. And we take them around, we show them the dog show, they get to pet a lot of dogs, they get to do all the stuff, and you ask them, and of the group of 20, 75% want to go into shelter medicine.
Mhm.
Really?
And the other 25% want to do mixed animal, and they do
it's
that for
one
2 or 3
person
years,
kinda
and
like in the back of the room, like, just barely raises
right,
their hand above the table, and doesn't don't rat me out, right? Don't
right,
tell my friends that they want to
right,
do theriogenology.
right.
It is a societal thing, and it is part of what I talk about all the time. You talk about it all the time at NAIA. That we have got to quit allowing PETA, pick one, HSUS, to tell us how we talk about our dogs.
Mhm.
And language matters. And
Yes.
it matters as we take it into the world and people who are not
Yes.
dog breeders. And
Right.
that's, I believe, how we got to this point. But it doesn't change the place that we're in.
Right. Right. In the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, people were proud to own a dog that came from a breeder. They were proud to own a show dog. They were proud of that. And we have degraded that into the point that you have to apologize. At Thanksgiving, you have to adopt, which is really buying, a rescue dog to offset the fact that you have a purebred dog. It makes no sense to me that we are in a place in society that you have to hide that information. Um, every vet class that I go to, there'll be one student that stays afterwards, and he or she will say to me, "This is what I thought going to vet school was going to be like. You're the first person that has talked to me this way about being able to breed dogs, about having value in our
Mhm.
breeding stock. I'm so glad you are here, and I'm so glad you found me." But they always hang back, and they are the last person in the room because even as a first year student, they've already been indoctrinated into the fact that that's not mainstream anymore. What the heck have we done to our society?
Mhm. I mean, I, all of this to me is the conversation about corporate takeover of vet clinics that transitions to the conversation about we can't get in some places a C-section on our bitch without having our spay. To this whole conversation is part and
Yep,
parcel of the same thing, in my
it
opinion.
is. It is.
And
And we've really
like
messed it up. So we
I
need to take the conversation back as breeders and be proud of what we do. We need to stop being browbeaten by rescues, by people that are turning out dogs that are dangerous to have in people's homes, that are unpredictable in size, behavior, and needs,
Yep.
in health. We need to take back the conversation, and it's really hard because you go to Thanksgiving dinner and there is the rest of your family glaring at you because you came late because you had a sick puppy.
Oh yeah, I am the outcast black sheep barely spoken
Yeah,
to in my family
yeah,
because for these 50 some odd years, I've always had to deal with dogs and
yep,
going to funerals and weddings and baby showers and Thanksgivings and whatever has
yep.
been, you know, frankly put to the side. So is
Yep.
that on me? Is that on my family? Is that whatever? We all deal with the same thing.
Mhm.
And I think so. Here's my thought for what it's worth. We talk a lot about social media and encourage people to engage on social media more than just as their kennel page or bitching about dog shows on Dog Book. And I recently came upon threads and kind of have gotten to conversing on threads as a I never was a Twitter person, so no Xing for me. Um, and it's been a really interesting space because there's a lot of dog people on it. And they ask a lot of dog questions and they say things that give you an opportunity. And because it's set up as a really like cool, right? Like no attacking, no ickiness kind of space, you can make a polite comment to someone and not get dogpiled, right? I mean, like, and I've really found the opportunity to do that a number of times in this particular space. So it doesn't matter, I don't think, what social media you choose. It could be your local Craigslist. It could be your local, like, Facebook community, Facebook group, whatever it is, and interact with people in a positive and uplifting and not, oh my God, I can't believe you have a doodle kind of way.
Right.
And how we talk to people matters.
Yep. And words matter. There's just a lot. Just a lot we need to do better.
I would agree with that 100%. So, back to the whole
So
corporate thing.
I am proud. I am proud to be a dog breeder. I am proud to be part of the National Animal Interest Alliance. And I make that very clear to people. I am proudly part of this community, and we all need to step up and share that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other part that I see that society is an absolute, I don't know what it is, obsession with um sort of community approval, right? And I won't be liked if I brag about this or I'm proud of this, and somebody might be mean to me, and so I can't take my purebred dog and show it off. And someone will ask me if it's a doodle, and I'll get my panties in a twist, and I'm like, no, dude, just say it's a really cool dog, right? Here's my really cool dog that is represents history for the last 500 years.
Right.
I really think just taking that and owning it as ourselves is something that we can do. Now, is this going to, end the corporate takeover of veterinary clinics? I don't know about that. But perhaps we can encourage and take the opportunity anytime you get it. If you can find a veterinary, I've said this more times than I can count. Your thing about adopting a baby veterinarian, my thing about talk to a veterinary school every chance you got. As
Yep.
dog breeders, every chance that we have to make a positive impact in the lives of those people
Yes.
is a win.
Yes. Maribeth O'Neill has set up a program at Tufts that you get to be with a veterinary student that wants to come to your home if there's a whelping. They've set up events to go to dog shows so the vet students can go to shows, whether
That's
it's a
the one
performance
that I work
event.
with is
Yep.
with Maribeth on that. Yep.
Yep. She's got a PowerPoint that if you can get into the veterinary school, you can go and present it. You don't have to write your own PowerPoint. There's a lot of opportunities. Adopt a veterinary student. I mean, seriously, take one under your wing and take them to shows, take them to events, teach them how you groom your dog. This is your opportunity to start turning this around. So if you're afraid to do it because you don't want to speak in public or whatever your excuse is, get over it.
I'm gonna have to say I'm with Marty. Get over it because it is a matter of, not to be hyperbolic, a bit life and death for purebred dogs and some of the things that all of us listening to this podcast hold dear.
So if you want your grandkids, your great grandkids, your nieces and nephews to be able to experience the joy of purebred dog ownership, get over it. Start helping contribute to improving the situation and stop whining about it to each other.
Yes.
Step up and do something.